So throughout the year, throughout a hunting season, you don't just get multiple opportunities at good deer. So when you get those few opportunities with a true mature buck, you've got to take advantage of it. And I didn't take advantage of it tonight. I had those opportunities and I didn't take advantage. That's hunting. Here's my story. Back out on Property X tonight. It's Friday the 13th. And I'm hoping the monsters come out tonight. Nothing like walking through the woods in the dark on Friday the 13th. So should be a good time. Planning on setting up on the ground tonight. Haven't done that. Plan to do it in a while. There's a spot the other day I found. It's just with the leaves coming off the trees and as skinny as the trees are where I'm hunting, it's getting hard to hide in the trees. So there's a lot of ground cover still. So it's really going to be one trail, and I just got to hope the right deer walks down it. The right deer walked down it a couple weeks back, which is how I went and scouted that area. So we'll see.
Been pretty slow so far. I feel pretty dumb right here, but I told myself I was just gonna stick it out and see what happens. So, not really any trees to get in around here. I know I look completely wide open, but right on the back side of the camera there's a big bush, and if they come in from that way, I should have a shot, but we'll see.
So after this video, some time passes, and I'm kind of getting antsy, I'm fidgety, and I start hearing what sounds like something behind me in the slough. So I ended up standing up. My knees were killing me. I stood up, turned around. I could see over the slough, but I couldn't really see through it. So I turned around, stood up to see if anything was working on the other side or kind of working through it, and nothing was there. When I turned around, there was a doe coming down my trail, and I'm standing there like a fool, standing straight up in the air. She stops, she looks at me, takes a few more steps, looks at me again. At that point in time, I'm wondering, maybe I'm camouflaged a little better with all this stuff behind me than I thought. She takes a few more steps, looks at me, and then looks straight back behind her, and I see a buck coming. And I could tell it was a small buck. Ended up being a little 3-pointer. He had a spike on one side, probably about a 9 to 10 inch spike, and then a little fork on the other side. And he was nose to the ground, running, never slowed down. And they passed 8 yards by me. The buck never looked at me. The doe didn't seem to care that I was there. So after that, this is the second time in the past week that I've seen a buck chasing a doe. So settle back in. I get down in my spot, and I have high hopes that there's going to be another buck coming down that trail. And then, sure enough, 5 minutes later, out of the corner of my eye, I see antlers coming down the trail.
I just had a big shooter at 8 yards. He was running. I stopped him as soon as he slammed on the brakes. If I couldn't have shot right then, I was still trying to find him in my pen. He was a really good buck.
I certainly don't want to make excuses, and I don't know if it would have helped at all, but I was fumbling around trying to hit the record button on my phone. I tried a new stabilizer phone mount today, which I liked a lot. I just didn't hit record in time. May have led to me stopping that deer a little bit late, but even with the split second that he gave me and the way he was running, I don't know. That was going to be I needed him to stand there and probably try to figure out what I was for a few seconds to have a shot, and I certainly didn't get it. So I was disappointed, to say the least, at this point, but I tried to stay optimistic. And I just told myself, if I just had a 3-pointer come down and then I just had a shooter come down, maybe another mature buck is going to come down this path. So I'm sitting there, and then again, out of the corner of my eye, I see him coming. This time, I ain't worried about the phone, so I don't have any phone footage of the deer. But he was big. He was bigger than that deer. I would say by 20 inches bigger. So I would estimate the second buck at probably the 150 to 160 range. He was a real big deer for North Texas. And I drew back, and he either saw me draw or something, but he busted me, spun around, ran back, was stood somewhere between 30 and 40 yards. I couldn't really tell which distance he was at, and I knew with him being on high alert, sending an arrow at that point in time, unknown distance, it was only going to lead to likely a poor shot. So I ended up not sending an arrow. that was all for this hunt. But this was probably the craziest hunt I've ever been on, the funnest hunt I've ever been on. Now that I've had a little bit of time to kind of settle down and think about it, it was just all that action took place in about 15 to 20 minutes. It started at about 5:20, and by 5:40, I was done. I mean, it was getting too dark to see. It was intense. Hunting on the ground's not something I'm really familiar with or comfortable with. There's definitely a unnerving kind of feeling to it, being on the ground with everything. I feel like when I am elevated, there is that element, that kind of feeling of like a safety blanket, knowing that I'm above everything in a tree. But it was intense. I see why people like those super close encounters. Seeing those giant bucks eye to eye at 8 and 10 yards is a major rush and dopamine dump. It was a blast. When I just think of how I could describe this hunt, it's just, I feel like I was successful because I found the trail. So many times I'm one trail off, or I'm just too far out of range, but I was on the trail tonight. I found the spot. I found the X, but I got busted. I wasn't able to hide myself enough to make it happen. So I was successful, but then there was also a failure. There was elation of having that encounter, but a heartbreaking ending to needing just a few more seconds to be able to send the arrow. Both of these bucks tonight were 100% redemption bucks. I shoot those bucks, I have my redemption. Well, I'm still on the hunt for redemption.